What's up, everybody? This is Chris at A Reader's Journey, and today I just want to do a little bit of a sort of mid to late November reading check-in, which hasn't been much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been reading, but also I just kind of want to talk about what I've been up to. I'm writing a little bit, and some life updates, stuff like that. So if you're here for just book recommendations or reading stuff, you might check out after the first few minutes, but that's okay, because I don't just want to talk about reading books. I write and I'm going to school and other stuff is going on, so I just figured why not talk about that as well. So yeah, as far as what I've been reading, I mentioned, I think at the end of my October wrap up, that I wanted to start book 2 of Philip Chase's Adan trilogy, which I have, and that is The Prophet of Adan. So I read book 1, I think right when it came out last year in 2023, in May or something, June, something like that, and I loved it. But for some reason, it takes me a long time to pick up sequels. I know I mentioned that in like every video, but I don't know why. It takes me forever. But I did pick up The Prophet of Adan, and quick note about the end of book 1. Since it had been about a year, I was a little bit hazy on the details of what had happened to our main characters, but I figured I'll just jump in and see where Philip Chase picks up with this and not worry too much about the details, because I'm sure it would. Usually when I start a sequel, a lot of the plot details and the memories come right back. And that's exactly what happened here. So I'm gonna try not to give any spoilers, but I do want to say that the prologue is incredible for Prophet of Adan. I didn't really know what to expect. I know this is kind of like, people talk about this series and Philip Chase's writing like it's somewhere between Tolkien and modern fantasy, or a mix of the two. He's got his own unique style and things going on. But I thought with the first few paragraphs it was going to start slow, kind of with the secondary character in book 1, but immediately there's some like huge event happens, and it was staggering, really unexpected by me. But this book gets off to an insane action-packed start. I hope that's not a spoiler. But things that were hinted at right in the last few lines of book 2 really like break out onto the scene here in a huge way, that I was not expecting. So it starts with a bang. I mean, full tilt, balls to the wall. It's not one of my favorite phrases, but like this was like jaw-dropping, a jaw-dropping opening, and it doesn't really let up after that. After the prologue, which is really like a full chapter length, I think it was like even like 15 pages or something like that. I mean, we get a little bit of a slowdown with some of the main characters, but then we jump right over to, I guess, a little bit about the events of book 1 if you haven't read it, which I know I'm talking about the sequel, so whatever. But like, this is a big war going on, or this war of religious conquest by one of the religions in the world that has seized a lot of power and is kind of all on the march. So that's still going strong, and our main characters are taking the brunt of their advances, their attacks, and they have a lot of weapons and creatures and armies at their disposal, and they're going hard. And our main characters are really receiving the impact of that right at the beginning. But our main characters get a little bit of a slowdown, but then we cut right to some other characters in the world, I think, that were present in book 1, some more like kings or dukes in different kingdom, and their soldiers, and they're like in these like guerrilla tactics, because they've been ousted from their city. Again, I hope these aren't spoilers. I'm trying to be as vague as I can, but like there are ambushes planned and counter attacks and like unexpected turns, and there's magic here, trying to control magical creatures and wrest them from the enemy. And that was a really epic, insane, action-packed chapter. And then from there, like probably my favorite chapter was this whole other culture that I'm not even sure if they were mentioned in book one. It's been so long since I read it, but it's kind of more, I'm not too familiar with like Celtic culture or history or any of that, but it felt a little bit more like a Celtic, I don't know, Anglo-Saxon, I don't really know the difference, sort of culture. And another epic, sweeping, insanely action-packed chapter with an entirely new point of view character, an entirely different culture. I mean, violence, we have a prophecy, we get, I just loved it. It was insane. It was like, yeah, it's like expanding the scope of book one even further and filling out more details and peoples and cultures and kingdoms on the map. That was another thing. Right when I opened this book and I looked at the map, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be awesome. I just, sometimes you want a fantasy book that has a really cool map and has like dwarves and elves, and it felt familiar in that way. Definitely not the elves, though. The elves are way different here. But yeah, this is an incredible opening to book two. And then with our main character, Dayraven, we are a little bit slowed down in a sort of isolated environment a little bit. And he's a little bit of like a Luke Skywalker kind of training in this magic ability, and he's, you know, somewhat resistant to embracing it. And he's like a fish out of water, but he's trying to learn. And that was another thing in this book is, I hate the term magic system, but like the magic in this book is really spiritual in nature. And the way Philip Chase is writing Dayraven's perception or experience of magic, and I hesitate to even call it magic because it is so tied into spirituality in this world. And I don't know, just his experiences with it are pretty fascinating and really resonate with me. You know, I'm interested in spirituality in terms of like our connection to other living things or the earth or other people in the world around us, and we're getting a really sort of vivid, visceral, not first person, but immediate individual's experience of connecting to the world around them, you know, in a, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, illustrative way, personal, experiential, I don't know. But yeah, it's got really interesting things going on with magic and spirituality. And yeah, the expanding scope of this is really cool. I think this book is a little bit longer than book one, which I do want to go back, and I know Alan from the Library of Alexandria did the audiobook narration for book one, which just came out recently. And I do want to go listen to that because he's one of my favorite people on BookTube. And I don't normally listen to audiobooks, but that's one that I definitely want to check out, both to support Philip and Alan, but I am trying to get into audiobook listening a little bit more lately because I'm interested in, I think people suggest it as a way to read more, you know, while they're on a commute to work or driving around, or while, you know, doing chores or anything, to get more reading done, because I'm not getting a lot of like physical reading done at the moment for different reasons, and I'll get into that a little bit just because it's related to other stuff I want to talk about. But yeah, if you haven't checked out The Way of Adan or The Prophet of Adan by Philip Chase, I know all three of them came out last year, but I would highly recommend it. I think it's really underrated on the fantasy scene right now. Um, I think Philip Chase is a really incredible writer, and I mean, his character work is awesome. The lyricism or real lyricality of his prose is really good, and it has that classic feel of like the sweeping epic scope and love for the land and nature, and different classic fantasy tropes and races, and a bit of a hero's journey at the heart of it. But yeah, I would highly recommend getting into this series. I think it's amazing. I think The Broken Binding, they're releasing book 1, and that sign up happened pretty recently, which I don't really do special editions because I don't have the money for it right now, but the cover reveal for the cover is beautiful, and I know there's a lot of interior art in there as well. So if I did have money, I would buy that at some point, but not right now. So yeah, that's really the only thing I've been reading. The only book that I've made any significant progress in, which I know we're like 2/3 of the way through November, so that kind of is a bummer. But I'm pretty much wrapped up with Great Expectations, which is what I'm reading for school by Charles Dickens. I'm having a hard time finishing it just because we've kind of moved on to like film adaptations of it, and so I'm trying to prioritize. I'm going to school. I go to like USF in Tampa, Florida, and I'm doing like a English creative writing degree, but I'm taking some literature classes and like studying, Great Expectations, Jane Eyre, and a lot of adaptations of those, both written and cinematic or film adaptations, which is really cool. But yeah, Great Expectations I have over here. Where is it? It's buried under here somewhere with all my school notebooks and whatever. This is the copy of it that I have. It's just I think a pretty cool copy. So I only have like 30 pages left, but I'm enjoying the ending of it. The way the story is wrapping up is really cool, and I forget if I mentioned it, but I watched like the David Lean adaptation, black and white, from the 1940s, which had some really cool parts to it. And then we also watched Alfonso Cuarón's, I think it was 1997 or 1998 adaptation with Ethan Hawke and Gwyneth Paltrow, Robert De Niro, a few other people, Chris Cooper, I think. That's my favorite adaptation of that book so far. If you haven't seen it, I think it was like panned by critics and audiences when it came out, and it was like considered a failure, even by Alfonso Cuarón and like a cinematographer and stuff. But I loved it. I thought it was like a really interesting, unique. They made a lot of interesting choices in adaptation. Like it was moved from the 1800s to modern day. Actually starts out in Sarasota, Florida, which is pretty close to me, which is kind of cool. And then hops to New York when he grows up, and he's a painter or an artist, and it has really interesting interpretations of the themes, sort of like the coming of age, one-sided narration that happens in these types of books, Bildungsroman or whatever, where an older character is looking back and narrating their childhood, and sort of some of the themes that come along with that are every character is interpreted or portrayed, conveyed through their perspective. So we're getting like one person's perspective of the events of their life, and it's so making the main character Pip, he's called Finn here, it's Ethan Hawke, a painter, was really interesting. Anyway, I know I've kind of transitioned into talking about my classes at school a little bit, so if you're not interested in that, that's fine. I don't really care. I just felt like I'm making a video today, and talking about what I've been up to. But that movie is really great. I would recommend watching that. Like the cinematography is beautiful, and Ethan Hawke is a really cool actor. I want to check out more of his movies. I've only seen a handful. Robert De Niro is always great, solid performance. And then we also did watch like I think it was an Indian adaptation on Netflix called Fator. And it's like, I don't really know the political landscape or the history that was going on in that too well. I should do more research on it, but it was like Kashmir, which maybe is on the border of India and Pakistan. I'm not sure. But like it's another interpretation of Great Expectations, which is a story I'm coming to really love, and I think has a lot of applications. Can be put in any setting really, because it's about class and social mobility or the lack thereof, or the unfulfilling nature of social mobility when like you don't really know, when like you lose connection to yourself and the things that matter because you're too concerned with wealth than with taking care of the people that are close to you. And yeah, just like a loss of self through seeking and obtaining wealth, and like the disillusionment of that. Anyway, it's put into another more modern setting, which is really cool, and the cinematography in that movie was insane. It was even better, I thought, than Cuarón's version. And the actors I thought did a really great job. I think it was kind of riffing on the Cuarón version because, again, the main character is like a painter or an artist. He does all kind of mediums in this one. But another really fun adaptation of the classic, and that's kind of a theme of the literature courses I've been taking, which is cool. I didn't expect that. I hadn't been back to university or college in a while, and taking literature classes, the focus has been a lot on adaptations and how classic literature has been adapted like into modern settings, or even expanded upon in other books that have come out, like, what was it, Wide Sargasso Sea. My cat's right here. Hey Kiki. I promise there's a cat right beneath me. I'm not just petting the air. Maybe you see your tail. I don't know. So yeah, like how different filmmakers and authors have reinterpreted the themes and characters of the original novels into more modern settings, and like what the core of the novel is, how they consider that. It's pretty fascinating. So and I've been having fun with that, and I'm doing like a group project in that class. I mean, we're really reading some interesting stuff in all of my classes. Like, we're doing a group project on like adaptation and how film as an art form, when it like tries to do adaptations of classic novels. Kiki, don't mess with the tripod. She's right in the middle of much. We'll see how this goes. What was I even talking about? Yeah, studying adaptations is still an evolving kind of study at the university and critical level. Anyway, doing a group project on that, and then I'm going to write my final paper in that class on Great Expectations and the Alfonso Cuarón movie. And yeah, I'm also, should we talk about anything else I've been reading? I'm also in a fiction class, like a sort of introduction to fiction class. Kiki. I look like a crazy person. We've been reading some cool stuff in there. Like the textbook we have is really good, but the professor is using excerpts from other books and sources, and short stories that are really interesting and cool. Just last night or yesterday, I read some Ursula K. Le Guin, one of her short stories, which I've only read from her Wizard of Earthsea, the first book in that series, which is amazing. I read that earlier this year and loved it, and I've been really interested in reading more of her work, not just in Earthsea, but science fiction, short stories. I know she's written a lot of essays and nonfiction pieces about literature and art and writing. And the short story that we read was Darkness Box, I think is what it was called. Really cool, somewhat challenging, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not surprisingly challenging, but I don't know. It was really interesting. Like, her language is so, how do I describe how she uses language? Simple is like not, it's like clear, simple, rhythmic. I use the word methodical sometimes to describe certain writers in their prose, like measured, because it feels like every word is chosen for a reason and there's not a lot of like fluff in any sentences. Like very meticulous isn't right either. It's like a measured, rhythmic, clear, evocative prose style that I really like. And I think some of it was aimed at younger audiences, so like the simplicity of the language is not deceiving. I'm having a hard time finding the right words today. But yeah, it was like, I could consider, like, it might have been aimed at children. There's a little, like, I think, epigraph or introduction that says it was based on something her daughter had done, which was like walk up to her and with a box and say, guess what's inside? And then she says, darkness. And so that inspired Le Guin to write this story, which was fascinating. It was like, starts out with a kid walking on the beach, but he casts no shadow and leaves no footprints. Anyway, he turns out to be a witch's son, and it's this really like dreamlike world where there seems to be no consequences to people's actions, and time has kind of stopped or been frozen, and there's like a prince, and he's in that war with his brother, and they're in this eternal, unending battle where even if they kill each other, they wake up and do the same thing the next day. But anyway, it was a really somewhat challenging because I couldn't figure out the rules of the world. But that was kind of, I think, the point of the story, is that writing should be open to interpretation, which kind of relates to, we also did a reading that was an essay from her about, I think it was called A Message About Messages, and it was about how she has been, or was, so frustrated with like reviewers and critics of her work, especially of her like work that was aimed at children or teenagers. Frustrated with people who try to pick out a clear-cut message from stories, and this essay was all about the reading experience and reading fiction. The whole point is the reader's interaction with the words in the narrative, and it's not, you know, writers might have some kind of underlying theme or message that they're exploring, but there's no clear answer, and it should be both open to interpretation and based on the reader's interaction with the author's words. And yeah, that there shouldn't be any clear-cut messages in reading. Like, the experience of reading is physical, emotional, spiritual. You know, it's not just reading text and trying to pick it apart for themes and messages, but it's so much more than that. And that really resonated with me, both personally in my own, my preferences and my thoughts about reading and writing, but also it helped me understand kind of maybe what her intentions were with that other story, Darkness Box. So anyway, I have like, my younger brother a year or two ago bought me like the big beautiful illustrated edition of it's over there on my shelf, The Books of Earthsea, which is probably the most beautiful book I own. I have to go grab it, but it's over there. Anyway, and I think it has some short stories in it, in the Earthsea world. It's got, I feel like it might have some essays from her, maybe on the themes of fantasy, but it's got maybe four novels or novellas in the Earthsea world, and I want to get to that really soon. I read the first few pages of Tombs of Atuan earlier this year, right after I read Wizard of Earthsea, but I was kind of in the mood for something else. I like to hop around between different worlds and series and genres, and all that. So I do want to get back to that soon. I love her writing, and I want to read everything by her. I know I'm just getting started, but I'm excited. And then I guess, yeah, that's a little bit more about what I've been reading. I've also, part of the reason I haven't read as much this month is because I have been writing, which, you know, I intended this to be a reading channel, but if I'm not reading much because I'm writing, it's all in the same kind of world for me, and like world of interest. So why not talk about it? Because what I read inspires what I write, which is usually fantasy. I don't think I've ever tried to write anything that's not fantasy. And I don't know if anybody cares. I might have mentioned it. I know I made a few videos last year, and then I deleted all of them for different reasons. But I like to write fantasy. I've only ever finished a few short stories, and I've never finished a novel, even though I've been trying for years. I get really like into a project for a month or 2 or 3, and I'll make a lot of progress, and then I'll feel like for some reason I'm just banging my head against the wall and something's wrong with it. So, or like the last few years, I've been starting a semester of school, stopping, starting, stopping. So like I'll be in the middle of a writing project like earlier this year, and then the summer semester started, and I was like, gosh, I don't have any more time to write. So that kind of fell by the wayside, and I wasn't super happy with it anyway. It was sort of like why not mention it? It was like a private detective goblin character. It's like a scribe, elven sidekick in this like Victorian / turn of the century kind of world, and that was a lot of fun. I think I was 40 or 50,000 words into it, and then my summer semester started, and I didn't have time for it anymore. So the thought of getting back to that is, I do want to get back to it one day, but I've been learning a lot in my fiction and poetry writing classes this year, and so I think I'm developing a little bit more as a writer, and I always like to explore new ideas, so that's what I've been doing lately. And so yeah, I haven't been reading as much because at night, which is when I usually do my reading or writing, I've been like working on a project a little bit here and there just for fun. And again, it's another fantasy thing. I don't really want to say anything about it because I'm also like submitting it to my workshops in my fiction writing class, which is interesting because I didn't intend it to use it for the class. I was just doing it for fun and like texting one of my brothers back and forth ideas, and he's been super great as the first reader for everything. But yeah, I've been submitting it to workshops, and I'm gonna get some feedback on it soon. So that's been really fun. You know, it's kind of just like I'm trying to play around with humor a little bit more in my writing, and like playfulness or silliness, but never to the extent that I don't take the characters seriously or like the world itself. I've been having a lot of fun playing around with characters that are like really grumpy, misanthropic, jaded, or cynical, even kind of like selfish, and some of them are kind of like scumbags and cowards, which those are some of my favorite characters in fiction. In Jade City, my favorite character is Bureau, if that tells you anything. And in Harry Potter, my favorite character is Argus Filch. So that probably tells you a lot about the type of characters I'm writing. And that's like, I'm finding a lot of humor in it, and I'm also not outlining much at all. I'll have a vague idea of the big picture, and I'll kind of like in my phone sketch out some ideas for the next few chapters. But I'm trying discovery writing for the first time. Normally I've tried to outline my book, my longer projects, and it never works because I lose motivation. And I try to write, I've been like exterior or extrinsic motivations kind of take over a lot of the time, where I want to be a famous fantasy, not famous, but a successful fantasy author. I want to write something that, you know, will fit into the marketplace, or do something new and original and have this epic world building, but it never works because it's not intrinsically motivated, and I start to lose enjoyment in the process. So that's kind of where humor is coming in for me in writing, just making myself laugh with characters who are kind of like bumbling or a little selfish, like scumbags and cowards. I really like writing, I'm finding, but that's not to say I'm not trying to include some, more heroic characters or other archetypes too. And yeah, I'm just trying to loosen up my writing and be more open to possibilities, have multiple perspectives within the same chapter, which is something I've never done before, but really play around with that and kind of, yeah, just as long as I'm having fun, just keep writing. And if I'm not, don't do it, because if it's getting stressful, there's no point. It's supposed to be enjoyable and a hobby really before anything else, something I do in my free time. So I've been having a lot of fun with that, and I should get some feedback on it soon from some of my workshop peers, fellow students. And then I guess I'll just talk about life stuff a little bit if anybody cares, because I'm in the mood to talk about it. So another reason why I haven't been reading much, and honestly why I haven't been buying the books that I want to buy, is because I've been sort of in between jobs for the last few months, which has never happened in my adult life. I was in the same job for like 13 years, like in retail, like low-level retail, and it was really unfulfilling. And for different reasons, I've pulled back from it, and started going to school over the last few years and trying to pursue my passions. And I, even to the point where like that job kind of brought about some health and mental health issues for me, so I pulled way back from that, and I've been focusing on school a lot. And so I haven't had, the money to buy the books that I want to buy. And yeah, recently this past month I've been applying for new jobs, and I'm excited about doing interviews. And then I just recently started a new job at like a dog kennel, like taking care of dogs, and I had my first shift, and that was really fun. I'm really excited about it. So yeah, I haven't had a ton of time to read this month because of that job seeking process, first shift, which always comes with a lot of anxiety for me. I struggle with anxiety a lot, but I'm hoping that this is a more fulfilling, not insane retail social anxiety environment. Taking care of animals seems a lot more healthy and natural than stocking shelves and answering calls in a big box retail store. Anyway, that's really personal, but I'm hoping I'll settle into that job soon. It's still super part-time, and also my school semester is going to end in very early December, so like 2.5, 3 weeks at most. So in December I should be able to read a lot more, at least that's the plan, and I'll have a little bit of spending money to buy some of the books I've been wanting for a long time. Like, I really want to continue the Farseer trilogy and get Royal Assassin, and I really want to continue the Dandelion Dynasty and buy Wall of Storms. So hopefully, I'll be able to get to those soon, after I finish Prophet of Adan, which is, I'm making very slow progress with this book so far, for all the different reasons I've mentioned. Is there anything else I want to talk about? I was reading, writing, school. Yeah, so that's what I've been up to in November. I guess I'll do like a end of November wrap up, and maybe a bit of a December TBR at the very end of the month, but it might honestly be a little bit similar to what I've been talking about today. But if anything else comes up, I will make a video. I'm trying not to make videos unless I actually have something to say, and I'm excited to, put my thoughts out there in the world and not get caught up in, I have to make a video or two every week, because, I don't really care about having a lot of subscribers or whatever. If I'm in the mood to talk about something, there's something I'm excited about, a book or anything with my reading or writing journey and everything, and then I'll make a video. And I do still want to make the Talents Trilogy video, you know, like why you should read it, recommendation for that soon. I mentioned that a lot, and I actually one night, like in a flurry of excitement, I wrote out a full like 10-page script, potentially for a video. I've never written a script for a video before, but I'm kind of interested to try that. Like I have everything I want to say, I think, written down in a structure that I'm happy with, but I want to see how reading a script on video, if that comes across naturally or not. You know, it's an interesting balance between trying to say exactly what I want to say, have my thoughts prepared and organized, versus, you know, capturing a more naturalistic feel. But I struggle with that sometimes. You know, I ramble a lot and I mumble and I mutter and I don't look at the camera very often. But yeah, I want to try that and hopefully get that out soon, because again, I really want people to read Ordinary Monsters and Bringer of Dust by J.M. Miro. Anyway, so if I get to that soon, hopefully I'll put it up. And I think that's it for me. This video is probably a little longer than I expected it to be and intended. But that's everything for me. Prophet of Adan, wrapping up school soon. I really want to get to stuff like Farseer, because I loved book 1 earlier this year. There's a ton of stuff I'm interested in, and read-alongs are happening all over the place on book 2 that I'm excited about. So maybe I'll make a video about that soon if my plans change. If you've watched all of this, thank you. I'm sorry I haven't read a ton and talked about specific books or made any recommendations that you probably haven't heard of. That's just what's going on with me, and you know, this time around on book 2, I'm trying not to stress about reading too much, forcing myself to read anything, joining any buddy reads and, you know, that I'm not having fun with. Really just like, do it when I have time, don't stress, this is supposed to be fun. But I do plan on reading more and making more videos. As soon as my school semester is over, I should have a lot more time. Anyway, so again, thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts on what I've been reading, what I've been talking about, any thoughts on, you know, adaptations of books that you've been interested in or that you've liked, any suggestions of anything by Le Guin, short stories, essays I'm really interested in. If you've read Prophet of Adan, what you think about it, without any spoilers, because I'm still pretty early in the book. But yeah, let's wrap this up. Thank you for watching. Thanks for following along with my reader's journey, my reading journey, and I guess my life and writing journey too, because that's some other stuff I might mention from time to time. But yeah, let me know what you've been reading, watching, doing, what you're interested in, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.